2019 Facilities Master Plan Campus Forum. My name is Felipe Lopez. I'm the Vice President of Business Services here at Cerritos College. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention a couple of things. This presentation, along with a copy of the video, will be posted on our Facilities Planning Committee website. Part of the task under our shared governance process tasks the Facilities Planning Committee is the committee that's in charge of completing and going through this facilities master plan. Part of that process included identifying a subcommittee, which is the working group that worked on this master plan update. This process started back in August of 2018. And so this is the culmination of all of the meetings and nearly a year process of going through this. We brought in a consultant, Deborah Shepley from Gensler, and she will lead us through kind of the journey that we went through with the master plan. At the very end, we'll provide recommendations to be included in the master plan. We'll talk about, answer any questions any of the audience members might have, and then talk about what the next steps. Okay, so Deborah?
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. I'm here to share with you a lot of work that's been done over the last several months that led up to the recommendations that we have here today. So we followed a 5-step planning process that's outlined here on the screen. It started with step 1, which is about getting organizing, laying out the schedule, identifying the subcommittee, and doing some long-range visioning. Then we moved into step 2, where we did a lot of analysis of both qualitative and quantitative data. That was really important to have that information available in order to inform the planning conversations. We were able then to pull all the information together in step 3, where we created a framework for future development. That framework included not only the quantified information, but also a set of facilities planning principles, which were then used to explore ideas, which happened in step 4. We explored a number of options and opportunities, and they all came together into the recommendations that were developed in step 5. So we're here in step 5 to share with you the draft recommendations. We still will be putting a document together, and that will lead to the final approval. So here are those 5 steps on a timeline. As mentioned, that started back in early August. We are in step 5 on target to complete in May with a board approval. Along the bottom, it indicates there's a series of different groups that we met with along the way. Then there was a number of dates that are identified with the colored boxes. The process was very, very participatory, which is what I want to move into next. We maximize the opportunities for many, many voices to be involved in the process. And those voices are the key stakeholders in your Cerritos College community. We spent a lot of time talking to and asking questions and listening of your faculty, of your staff, of your students. We had fantastic student interaction and collaboration in the process. So that really helped to make the project more informed. And again, just the more and more voices that can be part of the process, the better the product. So some of the things we did during the process I want to share with you. Early in September, we spent a day on campus. Our team was out front, just like the career fair here today, but we had a whole bunch of activity boards set up. We interacted with anybody who came by, and we asked a lot of questions about how people use the campus, how they experience the campus, how they interact with places they like for different activities, where do they like to go to socialize, where they like to go to focus. We asked a lot of questions, and I'm pulling forward one of the boards here that was one of the most popular boards. It was called 100 Ideas of how to make Cerritos College campus a better place. And this was really fun. We got fantastic feedback. And what we did is we went back to our office and we analyzed all of it, and we found that there were 6 common themes, which are these. So of everything we heard through all the boards and all the ideas, these were the themes that people were most interested in. People were very interested in student and campus life, A lot of discussion about student support services. Food and health, there was a lot of discussion about wanting to have more food choices along with healthy choices. Comments about the open spaces on campus. People were generally wanting to see more open space that actually could be used for a variety of purposes. Circulation, and of course there was discussion about parking. And then there was many comments about facilities and particular buildings. So that's just a glimpse of some of the things we heard, but it was really interesting to see these 6 topics that rose to the top. Knowing that not everybody was on campus that day, we also administered an online survey, again, to get more voices involved, and that was sent out to the entire Cerritos College community. We had close to 1,200 responses, and the majority of them were students, 77%. So we asked us different questions, some of them very specific, like this one. We asked how long it takes for everyone to get to campus. We asked about commute times. We also asked about how they get to campus. Are they driving, taking the bus, et cetera? And 68% of people that responded drive alone. 10% are dropped off. 9%, and I believe that number has been growing, 9% are taking the bus, which is great. 7% carpool, and we know that some people take the bus and the train, or the train and the bus. We also asked questions about how long it takes to find a parking space, and we have a lot of information that we're able to use. And then this is a question we asked about, where's your favorite place on campus? And we pulled out some of the quotes that we received. Some people mentioned they love the library because it's quiet. They can get their work done. Some people mentioned the Fine Arts Building. It's new, it's beautiful, particularly the outdoor space. The LA building was mentioned for a variety of reasons, including, again, it's new, it's beautiful, useful classrooms. The Learning Center, that was mentioned not so much about the building itself, but because of the help that the student gets when they go to the Learning Center. And then the outdoor hangout areas. It was mentioned, it's great, you can sit outside and charge your phone. So those things that you've been doing over the years are really recognized in these comments. We also asked on the flip side, what's your least favorite spaces? And there was mention of the health science building, the age, the condition, adult education. Again, here's some of those comments about food. I wish there were cleaner options, especially for people who are trying to eat healthy and to save money. Some discussions about parking. It takes forever to find a spot. What we did find out, it was not so much about finding a spot, it's about finding a spot in exactly where you want it to be, close to where you want to go. So there's often spots, and we'll look at that with a little more detail when we look at the parking. And then there were some comments about the police department. We also engaged with many people on campus when we conducted a sustainability forum. So this was also an all-day session. It was held in the Student Center, and we invited anybody to come by who was interested in talking about sustainability or to learn about sustainability. Through that forum, we shared a little bit more about what sustainability is, all aspects of sustainability, because some people have a slice of knowledge, but we use this opportunity to expand people's understanding of all the aspects of sustainability. And these are some of the ones that are mentioned on the screen. Also use it as an opportunity to highlight the really, really fantastic accomplishments that you've had here at Cerritos. The money you've gotten from utility incentives, close to $900,000. You've reduced your electricity and natural gas consumption. You've gotten over $1.5 million from the Green Jobs Initiative and used it in a variety of ways. And you've reduced your natural gas, which is just fantastic. These are just some. A couple more, your landscape all around campus, primarily drought resistant, which is fantastic. It lowers your irrigation, the need for irrigation. And where you are irrigating, you're using reclaimed water for over 90% of the landscape, as well as the athletic fields. And then a number of other points are mentioned here, the hydration stations that you have all over campus, the parking permit machines with the solar energy, and also that your swimming pools are heated using solar, heated through solar, which really reduces your consumption as well. So those are just some of the highlights. And it was really interesting for the people that attended to learn more about all the great things you're already doing that you can build on in the future for your facilities master plan. And then some of the activities we engaged with the groups that attended, we asked about priorities. So we got some personal opinions about what they think is best for the college to focus on. And this is one we pulled out in relation to water. And the top two categories were to look at stormwater, stormwater capture and release, as well as to have a system to identify where you have leaks, because that could really help save a lot of water. And then the other activities, the last one I'll share from the forum is where we gave each participant some Monopoly money, and then to say, okay, if this is your bank account and this is your fund you have to spend, how would you spend it on the different categories? And you could see the ones that rose to the top. And of all of them, the one that was the highest, that received the highest amount of money was to focus on well-being. So all of these conversations fed into the discussions we had with the subcommittee that was assembled. We used that as a lot of qualitative data as part of the data that was used. So it was a very data-informed process. So I want to share with you a little bit more beyond what I just looked at, because what's really important in facilities planning is to look at your existing facilities. So here's your existing campus. And this graphic indicates the age of the buildings on campus. And this is important to understand or to see patterns of how the campus has evolved over time. And so the darkest blue, the navy blue, are the oldest buildings, the 1960s buildings. And several of them are still here, including what's now called the multipurpose building, the woodworking building, the shower locker, as well as the field house. And then the next blue, a little brighter royal blue, were the buildings that were built in the 60s. And so on and so forth up through the orange, which are the most recent buildings, which are called out in the 2010s. Now there are light gray buildings on here. Those are the ones that are currently under construction. So when we look at all of this, and actually I do need to point out a couple of things. Some of your older buildings, all the blue buildings, a few have had extensive renovations, including the gym very recently, and also the LRC, the original part of the learning center in the middle. It was added on either side, but also the inside was renovated. So this is important to understand in terms of the age and understanding how the buildings are operating. And more importantly is to understand the condition and whether the way the buildings are arranged and laid out, if they're supporting the programs and functions that are currently housed in them. So we overlaid these colors, which indicate the Facilities Condition Index score. And this is a score that's developed and assigned through the California Community College Chancellor's Office. And it's based on a survey of all facilities on all college campuses, and they rate them from low to high. The lower the number, the lighter the color, the better the condition. The higher the number, the darker the color, the worse the condition. And so just a couple of note is down here, the annex to the community education building, the police building. Those are identified as a high score, as well as the seating for the stadium. And you might think of the stadium and think, well, is that a building? It is a structure, and it does have a score. So that was really important to note and had not been looked at in previous master plans. We also looked at patterns on campus. This one highlights the existing vehicular circulation patterns on campus to understand how people navigate the campus and where the paths are, so we could identify where there are areas that need to be improved. We also looked at the parking. And specifically, we looked at the parking count overall, and we looked at it in comparison to your enrollment, both current and projected, in order to understand if additional parking is needed. Then we looked inside of each of the buildings to understand the different room uses. So every room on your campus is categorized according to a code that's developed, again, by the Chancellor's Office, and it falls into one of these 5 categories. These that are highlighted in the box are considered the capacity load categories, meaning those are the ones where there's state formulas and guidelines that indicate, based on your enrollment, based on your weekly student contact hours, and a number of other factors, this is how much space you should have. So those are the ones you can actually measure to see if you have the right amount, if you have too much, or if you have too little. We were then able to use those formulas to look at your existing inventory, and this slide indicates where there would be an over or under situation. For example, in the lecture and lab category, which we put together as instructional space, the bar on the left indicates how much space you have, but the bar to the right of these 2 orange bars, the bar to the right indicates how much space is needed for the master plan horizon that we're looking at, which is 2030. So it shows as a deficit. You need more space. And that's true in all the different categories, that more space is needed in each of the categories. So we were able to use that data as well to inform the planning process. The process was also very integrated, and it's so important to note because your master plan begins with your educational master plan. Your educational master plan is really the foundation for anything related to facilities. The facilities master plan is really the physical transformation of the goals in your educational master plan or your EMP. And so we use this as the basis, and part of our process included the analysis of it and pulling forward the information that was most relevant. We looked at the external data, the internal data. We pulled that together to align and understand how the information needed to be looked at in order to inform the FMP, as well as understanding what the priorities from the EMP are in order to inform the FMP, so that everything that's in your educational master plan is informing all the recommendations for the campus, including the site and the facilities. We looked at the 6 goals that you're following as part of your educational master plan. And what our team did is we went through and we highlighted some of the words in these goals that can translate to physical development of your campus. And we pulled forward those common themes that we heard from your campus community, the ones that were top of mind to everyone on campus that they wanted, that they felt it was important to address. And we pulled together a set of facilities planning principles. Initially, these were a draft, and we reviewed them multiple times with the subcommittee. And we're sharing with you the final principles that it was really important to get to this point in the process before we started exploring options. So these are the 6 principles. I'm going to go through them briefly as a baseline and understanding before we start looking at what the recommendations are. So the first one's about student success. It's about improving access, making it really easy for your students to find all the programs and services that are needed. To develop the campus to support your pathways. It can be to be done in coordination with your guided pathways, really to support students' educational goals. To provide spaces all over campus to support collaboration as well as student engagement, those important factors that we know all lead to student success. The next category was about access and connectivity, and that starts from the first point where you enter the campus to create welcoming and inviting and campus entry points, to improve connections to all areas of the campus, to enhance connectivity and accessibility for everyone on campus, and to connect what's referred to as sometimes as the South Campus to the North Campus, to really integrate those together so it doesn't feel like there's this side and that side, to pull all of that together. The third one is about culture and identity. And that's about creating a welcoming and inclusive campus environment, developing all the spaces, not only the buildings, but also the outdoor space to support collaboration and that real feeling of collegiality. And from that to build a sense of pride and belonging here on campus for everyone, your students, your faculty, your staff, and to develop the campus to integrate with your brand identity. And that was a key goal that was identified as part of your educational master plan, and that can pull forward and be reflected in the development of your site and facilities. The fourth one is about being effective and efficient. So given the facilities that you have, to make sure the way that you're using them support your college priorities. Related to that, and this is a really important one, is to replace those buildings that are the oldest, most inefficient, and underperforming. To replace those buildings and move functions into permanent facilities that are right-sized to address your program needs, and they're designed appropriately for the way they will be used. And in doing so, that will help position Cerritos for maximizing state funding opportunities. The next one is about the stewardship of resources, and that's all of your resources, your land, your buildings, your available funds that you have. We mentioned to prioritize well-being, health, and comfort in design, and overall to create a safe and comfortable campus environment, again, for all. Community engagement was important as well, to develop the campus, to really invite the community in, to make it welcoming, to look at opportunities to have the community access events or performances, and also improve your image along your edges of your campus so that maybe someone's not on campus, but they're driving by, and their perception of Cerritos College is improved through that experience. So I spent a little time going through them because they're important as understanding, because all of the recommendations that we're about to share tie back to multiple of these facilities planning principles. So now I'll share some development concepts and first go through them in a very diagrammatic way, and then we'll go through the actual recommendations. So this diagram is your existing campus, and the buildings that are in light green are the buildings that are currently under construction. But for the purposes of planning, we assume they're done because we're planning for what happens next. This graphic indicates a series of buildings that are recommended for removal, meaning the functions will be relocated to new permanent facilities. The buildings in red are buildings that have been discussed as those that would be removed for a number of years. And the buildings in orange are the ones that were discussed as part of this planning process as additional buildings to be removed. And so the ones in red were from your 2011 facilities master plan, and then this is updated. So that the recommendation is all of these buildings get removed, functions get relocated, and when you take those off the site plan, you can see that this is a starting campus then to apply a set of design ideas in order to address all of your facilities planning principles. So it begins by creating a very strong network of pedestrian corridors. And this is about improving access to all areas of the campus and making it easy for people to navigate, find their way around, and to access the programs and services. And it truly connects not only in the east-west direction, but also all the way down to the south part of the campus, over to where the health occupations building is, and further down all the way to facilities. That then created the framework for identifying locations for new buildings, which are showing up on this diagram in black. And from here, we identified where the major gateways into the campus, vehicular pathways, and drop-offs. And those are the blue areas that are indicated. So up at the front, what's planned is to create a new gateway into the campus off of Alondra, and a very clear and easy vehicular circulation loop with a clear drop-off that says, this is the front door to Cerritos College. If you're here for the first time, this is exactly where you go. Over here, we have a couple areas indicated as drop-offs that will come to your new Performing Arts Center. So off of 166th Street, we have a loop around here. And on New Falcon Way, what we're proposing is you come all the way through and then turn around and have a drop-off to really clarify the circulation as opposed to having people weave their way in and out of Lot 10. And then the third drop-off area is in front of this stadium, where that's where many of your community or first-time visitors might experience the campus, so there's a recommendation to create a clear drop-off there as well. This creates a framework for a series of open spaces, those spaces that will support the collaboration of students, faculty, and staff, and also add a little more breathing room between many of these buildings that are very close together, and develop that collegiate environment. And we did find pockets of space in the light blue where we could add additional parking. Up at the front is part of your new gateway. One of the suggestions that came up actually during one of our subcommittee meetings was the idea that there didn't need to be as many tennis courts as you currently have. And we were able to reduce the number of tennis courts and get a little parking area right here on the west side, which will be adjacent to your new health and wellness center and the pool. We're also able to look at this area. We'll come back to this in a minute, but this area was looked at as very close to the campus core, prime real estate, and we're looking at using it for a new building as well as some additional parking close to the campus core. So now we'll jump to the recommendations, kind of give you a preview of what they would be. And we'll start with the existing building, existing campus, with all of your existing buildings, including the ones in construction, all shown in dark gray. Then we've highlighted in blue the buildings that are planned to be removed. And then this is your 2019 Facilities Master Plan, the draft recommendations. And there's a lot of information here on the screen. We also have a model on the side next to Felipe. But what I'd like to do is highlight some of the key features of this plan, and then we'll go look at certain areas with a little bit more detail. So first, your existing buildings are shown in white, those that are planned not to have changes. The buildings that are in the dark orange red are proposed new facilities. And the buildings and areas that are colored in the gold color are buildings that are recommended to have a major renovation with a potential change of use. So beginning up at the top here, as soon as you're, we'll go through the phasing in a little bit as well, but what's planned to be at the front of the campus is your new student services and administration complex that will be part of your front door and the new drop-off. To the west side, there's a location that's been identified for a future instructional building. Coming down along this side, this area has changed dramatically. It's currently where metals and woodworking is. That's recommended to move down into this location as the new CTE building, which is adjacent to auto technology and helps to clarify this zone of the campus. And what that does is it frees up this space for potentially 3 footprints. One instructional building, which we've identified here next to Fine Arts, and then 2 smaller buildings where we're suggesting having more public-facing functions. What we have listed here is a location for community education and for cosmetology. So those are buildings and functions that want to be more on a public-facing edge adjacent to parking. So this area of campus has changed dramatically and will really help to connect this part of the campus to this area. Adjacent to health sciences is colored as gold, and that building is in line for state funding to have a major reconstruction. Along with it, we're recommending to really improve the landscape areas around at the ground level to activate that zone of the campus. Coming down to this area, this is the spot right here where child development currently is. This is the existing playground. And we're showing a location for a future permanent child development center on the north side. And we're showing a location for a new police facility in the location where it currently is. We looked at several locations for a new police building, And this is the one that was landed on. At this location, we understand, is a good location with easy access. So we'll come back to that in case there's any questions. I'm going to jump over to here. Earlier, I mentioned the condition of the stadium seating. And it was identified as an area that really needed to be addressed. And so what this shows is reconstruction of the stadium seating on either side. And on the west side, when this seating is developed, the recommendation is to include the functions that are currently in the field house below the seating. So that's efficient use of land. And then what that does is frees up the existing field house because that could be removed. And then this area of the campus can be developed to add a utility field. So the recommendation is to take the utility field that's currently here, shift it over to the east side, so it's part of this whole zone with all the athletic fields. And then that's what frees up this piece of land here for a third future instructional building, along with some parking as well as an outdoor space. There's other improvements on here, including some locations for photovoltaics. These are shade structures that would be on the north side of lot C10. We're showing that New Falcon Way would come all the way through. So it would be divided at this point, so it's very clear that the drop-off would go over and around. And we're also showing potential future photovoltaic array, or a farm is sometimes referred to that. In this property, it's called, what's it called?
The corner lot.
The corner lot, because that could be an excellent revenue generation for the college. So if we drop the color from the buildings, but you can see there's a lot of recommendations for the outdoor development, all the landscape development, a number of site development projects. But a couple of them that I like to highlight are these three. So we'll start at the front with the new front door. The new front door addresses many of your planning principles, including creating that welcoming and inviting entry to your first-time visitors, for your students, for your faculty and staff, for your community, to really enhancing that sense of arrival for anyone who's either coming to campus or driving by. And it gives you a tremendous opportunity to showcase your brand. The heart of the campus, we're recommending a major renovation to your campus quad. And to eliminate the structure and the fountain in the middle to make it open and more flexible to support a variety of uses. That will allow for a lot of different events and activities and really enhance collaboration and engagement and a sense of belonging, and it will be welcoming and inclusive to all. And then many years ago, many of you are familiar with when Falcon Road closed and New Falcon Road was developed, and then the old one was Old Falcon Walk. What we're recommending is actually rebranding or changing the name and turning that into Falcon Walk and redesigning it and developing it so that it is truly for pedestrian. It has a pedestrian feel. It can be designed so there's little pockets of spaces to sit, to collaborate. We're talking about even having spots for maybe a pop-up coffee cart or a taco truck or something, so that really to activate that whole zone of the campus in the east-west direction, which will really help to connect the north campus to the south campus. It will also need to be kept available for emergency vehicle access, but it doesn't need to be designed like a road. It really could be designed for people. And we think that will really add to the sense of connection and also the utilization of that land. So the recommendations to go from existing to what it might look like in 2030, it's a big shift. So what we're going to take you through right now is the beginning of an implementation strategy to show you sort of step by step how these different areas of campus can be developed. And in order to do that, we had a number of consideration factors that we looked at. We looked at what is a logical movement of functions in order to make things happen, limit disruption, limit the number of moves, and also limit the amount of swing space or portables that you needed to bring on campus. And at the same time, positioning the college for maximizing state funding. And that has to do with looking at your space along the way to make sure you're not overbuilding in certain categories. So we had a lot of factors that we looked at, and we'd like to show you sort of how that would happen over time. So with the completion of the Performing Arts Center, the first area that will get freed up, we were talking about a little bit earlier, is the Bernai Center, the bookstore, and the public affairs building will come down. Functions will be relocated, and then this is the area that's designated for the new student services and administration building or buildings in that zone. So that will be a dramatic change to the front of your campus, creating that new front door. Once that's completed, all the functions can move out of the administration building, and a future instructional building can be developed on the west side of that. And it's at that point we're recommending that the main quad be developed into your new heart of campus. So you can see in that one area very early in the development of the plan, there's major change to the front of your campus, to the quad, and you'll have your new Performing Arts Center on the other side. Next, we're recommending that we're showing the Health Science Building, and it has a little S on it because that, again, as I mentioned earlier, is in line for state funding. So that renovation, we're looking at the timing of when that could be, and that it would happen during the same phase as the construction of a new CTE building, which means that metals and woodworking can move down into that location and free up the space that they're currently in to make way for additional instructional buildings as well as the community ed and cosmetology.
Deborah, before you move on, can you tell the audience the blue dots, why those popped up?
Yes, thank you. The blue dots pop up when a building becomes vacated because the occupants have moved into a new building. So for example, in the MP building, we showed a blue dot because we know that HR, which is currently in there, will move into the Student Services and Administration building. And when the BE, the business building, when all the classrooms that are in there can move into the new instructional building. What we're showing, we're keeping the blue dot on there because once some functions or occupants move out, there's a logic to keeping the building online a little bit longer so it can be for swing space. So there's other renovations where people will need to move in and out of a building, so we're keeping them a little bit long and determining how long you actually need to keep it. So the blue dots here show which ones are active still on campus and can have various uses. This will have a lot more analysis and a lot more detail that will be added. It's at this point in the next phase that we don't think we need some of those blue dot areas, some of that swing space. So we're looking at removing the multipurpose building and business building and creating that nice quad that will open up on the west side of campus. It's also the point that we're recommending that the stadium gets reconstructed. And that includes the stadium seating on each side, as I mentioned, the field house below, as well as a ticket and concession stand on the north side. So along with that will be the construction of the utility field, which will then free up the space where the existing field is for another instructional building along with the adjacent parking. We're also showing that the child development and police are developed at that point, and that leads to the overall facilities master plan recommendations. There are a number of projects on here that you might not have seen in an earlier sequence, and some of these projects could happen sooner or later. This is just a first pass as part of a master plan at a really high level look at what's a logical sequence of moves. But as this moves forward, a very detailed phasing and implementation plan will be developed.
Questions. So this is the time to, you got to see kind of the start to finish of this process. But we're also here to get some feedback, and if you have any questions on any particular phasing. Again, the master plan is at a very high level, so if you don't see your particular area, the master plan is also developed to be flexible. We don't want it to be so stringent and restricted that allows us to plan different. One of the things that we kind of changed in this process is instead of labeling buildings, we just call them instructional buildings because it gives us some flexibility because we don't necessarily know as of today what exactly, we have an idea, but things could change down the road of what programs that we would stick into those buildings. Student services admin building is a very fluid process right now. We're at the tail end of a process of selecting a new architect and going through that design and ultimately figuring out what all needs to be in there. We have an idea, but there has been a lot of conversations of other programs that might be able to fit in there. This is a perfect time to have those discussions and figure that out because we haven't began the programming or planning stages of that. But we just wanted to present this draft of the master plan, and then we'll take any questions you might have. Graciela.
I have a comment and then a question. I really like that open space from the, signature admin building, as someone walks in, it just kind of invites really like the public and people, students to the center of the campus. And the amount of green space, the way it's laid out, I think this is, it's exciting to see that we could have that kind of, layout throughout the campus. So my question is about the community ed building and the building that, first of all, excited to see even inclusion, but the fact that there may be, something that could include and, provide some support for all the programs that are in there. So, and I understand what you're saying, Felipe, about changes that may occur, but in this particular planning, was that include the community ed currently right now is called community ed building, but in there is housed all of our continuing ed. Community ed is a fee base, and then the non-credit and even the foster care education. So in your planning, that particular building represent all that programming and classes that occur under those programs, or is just community ed? Or, I guess I'm asking about function versus what currently is housed in that building right now.
My comment is I think it's flexible. That building could still represent what's currently in the current building now, but at a new location, a new building. There's been a lot of talks about the adult program. Does it make sense to stay out there, or does that make sense to pull it into the core front of the campus within student services admin? I think those conversations are still developing, and perhaps it could be leaning to perhaps pull it in. But again, it's right now. There hasn't been a final decision on that, but I think as we develop with the planning process with the student services admin building, it'll help direct us on what that final decision will be. Yeah, I think the goal of having community ed and the cosmetology out there is it's public facing, having easy access for community members to come up. The parking lot is adjacent to the building, really easy to pull up, go to those buildings and those type of activities on there. And so we really like the open spaces that this plan creates. A lot of opportunities to expand, to kind of piggyback on one of the frameworks that you saw was the food. I really do like the idea of creating, we're using the word Falcon Walk right now, but it could be anything, of kind of having a very inviting outdoor area that has a tremendous amount of seating, gathering places, and also food opportunities to be able to connect the south end of the campus with the north end of the campus, because right now most of our food is centralized in the student center, but provides the opportunity to expand additional food opportunities out in that area, because it's a very large area. To be able to provide a lot more opportunities of people, instead of having to go from one end to the other end of the campus just to get food, we can actually start targeting, and it kind of, if you see it, that kind of pulls in the northern and the southern side of the campus together as one unit, instead of seeing a kind of a divide.
The other thing we didn't mention was extending Falcon Walk in front of the Performing Arts Center. We're looking at taking this area and extending it all the way across. So this can almost create a plaza in front of the Performing Arts Center as opposed to driving all the way up almost to the building. But if we could pull it back, it would eliminate a couple of rows in Lot 10. But looking at the analysis overall, it looks like that would be okay in terms of the overall parking count. And it would really improve the zone of the campus. As you come in, there could be a wonderful food truck activity or something, or some sort of fair that could be on that side of the campus as well.
Yeah, and you'll see in this plan we put in there solar, a lot more solar on there. As new legislation comes about, we have to start moving to a net zero opportunities on campus. This here currently, it's currently a parking lot that generates rental income, but we wanted to at least have the option within the master plan if that didn't continue in the future, that this gives us some flexibility to perhaps creating a solar field out in that area for alternative use. And so this plan is designed to give us some flexibility on, looking into much more than a 2 or 5 year, but all the way up to at least a 10+ year out to 2030 of what the future of our campus would look like. Any other questions, comments? Okay. And then I think the next slide is next steps. So on April 16th, we will be presenting this to the Facilities Planning Committee. After that, we will be presenting, or I will be presenting at Academic Senate. April 24th, we have scheduled the board retreat. Our next April meeting is a board retreat meeting, and we'll be presenting it to the board with the hopes of final approval of the board on the May 15th meeting. And so once we have this finalized, this document would then be utilized for our accreditation report. Perfect timing on that. And so, and then that leads us to determine funding. Obviously, to develop a plan like that costs money to do that. So at the same time, once we finalize that, we will be coming up with a funding plan of potentially how to fund this. This also will then kind of segue into conversations on perhaps having another bond to be able to pay for the construction of this building. The next opportunity to have a bond on the ballot would be November 2020. And so this gives us a solid 18 months to do some analysis and determine what direction this campus will be heading. Okay.
I was going to ask, they're going to all those areas, but did they go to the students, like the student leaders? Did they get to see all this already?
Students were part of the process the entire time. They were on the subcommittee. They are a part of it. This outline follows our shared governance planning process. And so what you see here is in line with our documented planning process. And so that's why it needs to go to these areas because it follows our shared governance process.
Okay, one more question.
Yes.
None of these renovations will be paid for by our existing bond?
Our existing bond will complete the construction of the Health and Wellness Center, or Health and Wellness Complex. It will complete the construction of the Performing Arts Center. It would also complete some ancillary or smaller item projects on campus, like our shade structures or outdoor structures. And it would also significantly pay for all of the planning of the new Student Services Admin building. But it would stop there. We would have to consider additional funding. This plan also is designed to leverage a lot more state funding. We haven't really leveraged state funding as much as we would like to in the past. This plan begins that conversation to leverage a lot more state dollars on that. So it allows us, allows our bond dollars to go much further by utilizing state funding. You know, we have to follow the guidelines within the state to be able to get funding, but like you said, we mentioned here, the health science building is an approved state project. We're waiting funding on that. The other project that's a potential state project is Bella, which is our business liberal arts. On the screen, we actually have it labeled as instructional. Actually, if we can go back to it, and is this a pointer? It would be right here. So Bella in the old master plan existed here. We just changed the name and called it instructional because there's already a LA building here. And so, so it gives us some flexibility of adding different programs, instructional programs in this building. Okay? And then also with the state-funded project is child development as well. And so we're looking at other buildings to be potential state-funded projects on there, and we need to start beginning to get them in the queue to get them in that process on there. Okay. If no more questions, thank you for attending. Like I said, this presentation will be posted on the Facilities Planning Committee website along with a recording of this presentation.